The stepmother used to lock the millionaire's twin daughters inside a washing machine as punishment. Everything was kept secret until the maid saw the scene with her own eyes. When she reveals the cruel truth to the millionaire father, he does something shocking. Maria Elena Gutierrez clutched her worn leather purse as she stood before the imposing iron gates of the Sterling estate in Beverly Hills. The Mediterranean-style mansion sprawled across 3 acres, its cream-colored walls gleaming under the California sun. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the sound of a fountain tinkled from somewhere beyond the manicured hedges. This was a world away from her small apartment in East LA, where she had spent the last 3 months searching for work after losing her previous position. The intercom crackled to life. "Miss Gutierrez, please come to the main entrance." The voice was crisp, refined, with the kind of polish that money could buy. As Maria walked up the cobblestone driveway, she marveled at the pristine landscaping. Every flower seemed perfectly placed, every hedge meticulously trimmed. She had worked for wealthy families before, but nothing quite like this. Robert Sterling was a tech mogul whose company had revolutionized cloud computing. The newspapers called him a visionary, though they also mentioned he was rarely home, constantly traveling between Silicon Valley, New York, and international markets. The front door opened before she could ring the bell. Victoria Sterling stood in the doorway, and Maria was immediately struck by her beauty. Tall and elegant, with platinum blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon, she wore a cream-colored designer dress that probably cost more than Maria made in 3 months. Her smile was warm and welcoming, but there was something in her pale blue eyes that made Maria slightly uncomfortable. "Maria, how wonderful to meet you," Victoria said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I've heard such good things about your references. Please come in." The foyer was breathtaking. A crystal chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, and a spiral staircase curved gracefully to the 2nd floor. Original artwork adorned the walls, and fresh orchids sat in expensive vases throughout the space. "Your home is beautiful, Mrs. Sterling," Maria said, trying to keep the awe out of her voice. "Thank you, dear. I take great pride in maintaining a perfect environment for my family." Victoria's voice carried a slight edge as she emphasized the word perfect. "Let me show you around, and then you can meet the girls." As they toured the mansion, Victoria explained her expectations. Maria would be responsible for general housekeeping, preparing meals, and helping care for the twins. The pay was generous, more than Maria had ever earned, with the caveat that discretion was paramount. "The girls have been through some adjustments since Robert and I married 2 years ago," Victoria explained as they climbed the stairs. "Their biological mother passed when they were very young, and they can be challenging. They require a firm hand and consistent discipline." They stopped outside a door painted soft pink with twin nameplates, Emma and Lily. Victoria knocked gently before entering. The room was a child's dream, decorated in pastels with matching canopy beds, a massive dollhouse, and shelves lined with expensive toys. But something felt off. The room was too perfect, like a showroom rather than a space where children actually lived and played. 2 identical girls sat quietly on a window seat, coloring in books. They were beautiful children, about 7 years old, with their father's dark hair and serious brown eyes. When Victoria entered, both girls immediately straightened, their coloring abandoned. "Girls, I'd like you to meet Miss Maria. She'll be helping us around the house." Emma and Lily looked up at Maria with expressions far too solemn for children their age. They offered polite smiles and quiet hellos, but Maria noticed how they glanced nervously at Victoria before speaking. "Hello, girls," Maria said warmly, crouching down to their level. "What beautiful pictures you're making." Emma, who seemed to be the bolder of the two, held up her drawing. It showed a house with stick figures, but something about the proportions seemed strange. The figures were very small, and there were dark, confusing shapes that Maria couldn't identify. "That's lovely, sweetheart," Maria said, though the drawing gave her an odd feeling. "Emma, why don't you show Miss Maria your other artwork?" Victoria suggested, her tone honey-sweet, but somehow commanding. The child quickly shuffled through her papers and produced a different drawing, this one showing a family standing in front of their house, all smiling. It was clearly a second attempt, more careful and conventional than the first. "Much better," Victoria murmured. and Maria caught the quick look of relief that passed over Emma's face. As the tour continued, Maria learned more about the household routine. Robert was currently in Tokyo and wouldn't return for 2 weeks. The girls followed a strict schedule, lessons with a private tutor 3 days a week, structured playtime, and early bedtimes. There were rules about noise levels, about staying in designated areas of the house, about asking permission before touching anything. "I believe structure creates security," Victoria explained. "Children need boundaries to feel safe." The more Victoria talked, the more Maria sensed an undercurrent she couldn't quite name. The woman's smile never wavered, her voice remained melodious, but there was something calculated about her warmth. And the girls were too quiet, too careful, too watchful. That first week passed smoothly enough. Maria fell into the rhythm of the household, and she began to understand why the pay was so generous. Victoria had exacting standards. Every surface had to be spotless, every meal perfectly presented, every task completed with military precision. She inspected Maria's work daily, pointing out microscopic flaws with the same pleasant smile. The girls were polite but distant. During meals, they ate in silence unless directly asked a question. They never laughed loudly or ran through the house. When Maria tried to engage them in conversation, they would glance toward wherever Victoria was before responding in careful, measured words. It was on her 8th day that Maria began to understand the true nature of the household. She had finished her morning cleaning and was heading to the laundry room when she heard Victoria's voice from the kitchen, speaking in rapid, angry whispers into her phone. "I don't care what the social worker said. Those girls need to understand their place in this family. I will not have them embarrassing me at the charity gala next week." Maria paused, pretending to organize her supplies while listening. The problem is they still think they can get away with crying and carrying on like they did with the nanny before. "Well, I've found ways to correct that behavior. Trust me, they're learning quickly." The conversation ended abruptly, and Maria hurried to the laundry room, her heart racing. Something about Victoria's tone had chilled her. This wasn't normal parental frustration. There was something cold and calculated about it. The laundry room was in the basement, and as Maria loaded the washing machine, she noticed it was an industrial-sized unit, far larger than necessary for household laundry. The basement was finished but felt different from the rest of the house. The walls were concrete, painted white, and the floors were sealed concrete as well. Everything could be easily cleaned, easily sanitized. As she worked, Maria heard footsteps on the stairs. The twins appeared in the doorway, both looking around nervously. "Are you allowed to be down here?" Maria asked gently. "Victoria went to her meeting," Lily whispered. "We wanted to see where you were." "We're not supposed to come down here," Emma added, but she stepped closer to Maria anyway. "Why not?" The girls exchanged, a look that seemed far too mature for their age. "Victoria says it's not safe for little girls," Emma said carefully. "She says bad things happen to little girls who don't listen." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of bad things? But before either girl could answer, they heard the front door close upstairs. Both children went pale and ran toward the stairs without another word. That afternoon, while Victoria attended her weekly charity committee meeting, Maria paid closer attention to the girls. They played quietly in their room, but when she checked on them, she found Emma crying silently while Lily rubbed her arm. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Maria asked Emma. "I drew the wrong picture again," Emma sniffled. "Victoria said I need to think about what happens to little girls who don't make beautiful things." "Can you show me the picture?" Emma shook her head quickly. Victoria took it away. She said it was ugly, and it made her angry. Maria knelt beside the girls. "What did you draw?" "Just us," Lily whispered. "But Emma drew us too small, and she made the basement too big." "And I drew the washing machine," Emma added, then looked terrified that she had said too much. "The washing machine?" Both girls nodded, and Maria saw fear flash across their faces. "Victoria says we have to forget about the washing machine," Lily said. "She says it's just for clothes, not for little girls who don't behave." Maria felt her blood turn to ice. "What do you mean?" But the girls had heard the front door again. They quickly scattered to their beds, pretending to be asleep as footsteps echoed through the house. That evening, after Victoria had dismissed her for the day, Maria couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. She tried to tell herself she was overreacting, that she was misunderstanding something. But the fear in those children's eyes was real. Their unnatural quietness, their constant vigilance, the way they flinched when Victoria's voice carried even a hint of displeasure. The next morning, Maria arrived early. Victoria was in her study on another phone call that she ended abruptly when Maria appeared. The girls were already dressed and seated at the breakfast table, their hands folded in their laps, waiting for permission to eat. "Good morning, Miss Maria," they said in unison, their voices carefully modulated. As Maria prepared breakfast, she watched the family dynamics more carefully. Victoria's smiles never reached her eyes when she looked at the girls. Every interaction felt performative, as if she were playing the role of a loving stepmother rather than actually being one. And the girls responded to her with the kind of fearful obedience that spoke of consequences Maria didn't want to imagine. It was after breakfast, while Victoria was getting ready for her tennis lesson, that Maria's worst fears were confirmed. She was tidying the living room when she heard Victoria's voice from upstairs, sharp and angry. "Emma Sterling, you will come here this instant." Maria crept closer to the stairway and heard Emma's small voice trembling with fear. "I'm sorry, Victoria. I didn't mean to spill." "Didn't mean to? You've stained my silk blouse. Do you have any idea how much this cost?" "I'm sorry," Emma repeated, and Maria could hear the child crying. "Sorry isn't enough. You know what happens to careless little girls, don't you?" Maria's heart pounded as she heard Victoria's heels clicking toward the stairs. She quickly busied herself with dusting, but she was listening to every sound. Victoria descended the stairs with Emma's hand gripped tightly in hers. The child's face was red and tear-streaked, and she kept looking back toward her sister who had appeared at the top of the stairs. "Lily, you come with us too. You need to see what happens when your sister doesn't show proper respect for our beautiful home." Maria watched in horror as Victoria led both girls toward the basement door. She wanted to intervene, but her own vulnerable position stopped her. She was undocumented, working for cash, with nowhere else to go. If she challenged Victoria now, she'd be out on the street with no way to help anyone. But as she heard the basement door close and the lock click into place, Maria knew she couldn't stay silent for long. Whatever was happening in that basement, whatever Victoria meant by her threats about the washing machine, it was wrong. Those children were living in fear, and their fear was justified. The house fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Maria stood frozen, listening for any sound from below, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. 20 minutes felt like hours before the basement door opened again. Maria heard Victoria's heels on, the stairs first, followed by the soft padding of small feet. When the girls emerged, their faces were pale and streaked with tears, but it was their eyes that made Maria's stomach clench. They looked hollow, frightened in a way that went beyond a simple punishment. Victoria's composure was perfect as always. She smoothed her hair and checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Girls, go wash your faces and change your clothes. We have visitors coming for lunch, and I expect you to be presentable." Emma and Lily hurried upstairs without a word, clinging to each other's hands. Maria caught Emma's eye as they passed, and the child's expression was one of pure terror mixed with a desperate plea for help. "Miss Maria," Victoria called sweetly, "I need you to prepare lunch for 4. Mrs. Blackwell from the Children's Charity Foundation will be joining us, along with a photographer from Beverly Hills Magazine. They're doing a feature on philanthropic families. Everything must be absolutely perfect." As Maria worked in the kitchen, her hands trembled with rage and helplessness. Through the window, she could see the girls sitting silently in the garden, their usual childish energy completely drained. When the guests arrived, however, the transformation was remarkable. Victoria became the picture of maternal devotion, and the girls, as if by magic, smiled and laughed on cue. The photographer captured beautiful images of Victoria reading to the twins, helping them with their art, embracing them lovingly. Mrs. Blackwell, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes, seemed genuinely impressed by the family dynamic she witnessed. "It's so refreshing to see such a close bond between stepmother and children," she told Victoria. "Many families struggle with blended dynamics, but you've clearly created something special here." "These girls are my heart," Victoria replied, her arm around Emma's shoulders. Maria noticed how the child's smile faltered slightly when Victoria's grip tightened. "I would do anything to protect them and give them the best life possible." After the guests left, the mask dropped instantly. Victoria dismissed the girls to their room with sharp efficiency and turned to Maria with cold eyes. "I trust you understand the importance of maintaining our family's reputation," she said. "People like Mrs. Blackwell rely on families like ours to support their charitable work. Any disruption to that could hurt many people who depend on our foundation." That night, Maria lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the fear in those children's eyes, about Victoria's casual threats, about the way the girls had emerged from the basement. She knew she had to do something, but she also knew how precarious her position was. She was one person against a wealthy, connected family. Who would believe her? The next morning, Maria made a decision. She began to document everything. Using her phone, she secretly recorded conversations, photographed the girls' artwork that Victoria threw away, and started a detailed journal of incidents. The drawings Emma and Lily created when Victoria wasn't watching told a disturbing story. Dark images of children trapped in small spaces, figures crying, machines that loomed large and threatening. 3 days later, Maria witnessed something that changed everything. Victoria had found mud on the white marble floor of the foyer, tracked in by the girls after they'd been playing in the garden. Her fury was ice-cold and terrifying. "How many times have I told you about respecting our beautiful home?" Victoria's voice was deadly quiet as she gripped both girls by their wrists. "Clearly you need a stronger lesson about cleanliness." Maria watched in horror as Victoria marched the twins to the basement. This time she followed quietly, staying on the stairs where she could see but remain hidden. What she witnessed made her blood freeze. Victoria opened the industrial washing machine and turned to the girls with a smile that was pure cruelty. "Since you like dirt so much, perhaps you need to understand what happens to dirty things in this house." "Please, Victoria, we're sorry," Emma whispered, but Victoria ignored her pleas. "Get in," she commanded, gesturing to the massive drum of the machine. Both girls began crying, shaking their heads, but Victoria's grip on their arms was iron. Maria watched in disbelief as this woman who posed for charity photos forced 2 terrified children into the washing machine. They huddled together in the drum, sobbing, while Victoria stood above them with satisfaction. "This is what happens to little girls who can't follow simple rules," Victoria said. "Maybe now you'll remember to wipe your feet." She slammed the door shut, trapping them in darkness, and walked upstairs, leaving them there. Maria waited until Victoria's footsteps faded, then crept down to the machine. She could hear muffled crying from inside and gentle voices as the twins tried to comfort each other in their terrifying prison. Maria's hands shook as she pulled out her phone and started recording. She documented the closed machine, the sounds of distress from inside, and whispered her own account of what she had just witnessed. After 10 agonizing minutes, she heard Victoria returning and quickly hid. When Victoria finally opened the machine, both girls were silent, their tears dried, their spirit broken a little more. They climbed out without a word and stood perfectly still as Victoria inspected them. "That's better," Victoria said with satisfaction. "Now, go clean yourselves up. Can't remember this lesson." That afternoon, while Victoria was at her spa appointment, Maria sat with the girls in their room. She spoke gently, asking careful questions about their lives, their fears, their experiences. Slowly, pieces of the horrifying truth emerged. The washing machine punishments had been happening for months. Sometimes they were locked in for an hour or more. Victoria had convinced them that this was normal, that all children who misbehaved faced such consequences. "She says if we tell anyone they won't believe us because she's important, and we're just children," Lily whispered. "She says they'll take us away and put us somewhere worse." Emma nodded, adding, "She showed us pictures of scary places where bad children go. She said those places have machines that are much worse than ours. Maria felt sick. Victoria had systematically terrorized these children, convincing them that their abuse was normal and that seeking help would only make things worse. But Maria also saw something else in their faces when they talked to her, a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, someone believed them. That evening, Maria made phone calls to Child Protective Services, to family law attorneys, to anyone who would listen. Many hung up when she described the situation. It sounded so extreme. Finally, she reached Sarah Chen, a social worker who specialized in cases involving wealthy families. These situations are more common than people realize, Sarah explained during their clandestine meeting at a coffee shop far from Beverly Hills. Wealthy abusers are often protected by their status, their charitable work, their public image, but with proper documentation, we can build a case. Over the following weeks, Maria worked tirelessly to gather evidence while maintaining her cover. She recorded Victoria's threats, documented the children's psychological state, and compiled a detailed timeline of incidents. The breakthrough came when she managed to record Victoria during one of her basement punishments, clearly stating her methods and her belief that she was above consequences. The day before Maria was scheduled to meet with CPS, disaster nearly struck. Victoria had locked the girls in the washing machine for breaking a crystal vase, but something went wrong with the house's automated systems. As Maria was cleaning nearby, she heard the machine suddenly roar to life. The sound of the drum beginning to turn with children inside sent Maria into a panic. She ran to the basement and frantically searched for the emergency shutoff, her heart pounding, as she heard the girls' terrified screams from inside the moving drum. She found the power switch and cut the electricity just as Victoria appeared on the stairs. "What do you think you're doing?" Victoria shrieked, but Maria was already pulling the traumatized children from the machine. Both girls were shaken, but unharmed, clinging to Maria as they sobbed. Victoria's mask of control slipped completely as she realized what had almost happened. "This was an accident," Victoria said quickly, but Maria had recorded everything on her phone, including Victoria's initial casual dismissal of the girl's danger. The next day, Sarah Chen arrived with a police officer for a welfare check. Victoria put on her best performance, showing them the pristine house, the perfect bedrooms, the photos of happy family moments. The girls, terrified of the consequences, initially denied any abuse, but Maria had prepared for this. She presented her extensive documentation, her recordings, the children's drawings, and her detailed timeline. The evidence was overwhelming, and Sarah recognized the signs of sophisticated psychological manipulation. Within hours, the investigation expanded. Other staff members from the house came forward, including Margaret Walsh, a former nanny who had been fired 2 years earlier for asking too many questions about the children's welfare. "I tried to report it before," Margaret testified, tears streaming down her face. "But Mrs. Sterling had connections. She made sure no one would hire me, said I was unstable. I've been working in a different state ever since, always wondering what happened to those sweet girls." Margaret's testimony corroborated Maria's evidence and provided a pattern of behavior going back years. When child psychologists were allowed to evaluate Emma and Lily in a safe environment, away from Victoria's influence, the truth finally emerged. The twins spoke of months of psychological torture, of being convinced they were worthless, of living in constant fear of the machine in the basement. Their drawings, when done freely, showed their trauma clearly. Detailed images of children trapped in washing machines, dark basements, and towering figures who hurt them. Victoria's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely when the media picked up the story. The charity photos that had once made her look saintly now appeared sinister in light of the evidence. Her foundation was investigated, revealing financial irregularities and a pattern of using her charitable work to cover her private cruelties. Robert Sterling, reached by phone in Singapore, immediately flew home and filed for divorce. He had been genuinely unaware of the abuse, lost in his work, and trusting Victoria completely. His guilt was profound as he realized how his absence had left his daughters vulnerable. "I failed them," he told Maria through tears during one of their first conversations. "I thought providing for them financially was enough. I thought Victoria loved them. How could I have been so blind? The legal proceedings moved swiftly once the evidence was presented. Victoria lost all parental rights and faced multiple charges related to child abuse and endangerment. The girls were placed temporarily with their Aunt Catherine, Robert's sister, who had been trying to maintain contact for years but had been systematically excluded by Victoria. Under Catherine's care, Emma and Lily began to heal. The transformation was gradual but remarkable. Their laughter returned, tentative at first, then growing stronger. They started attending regular school, making friends, playing like normal children. The nightmares continued for months, but therapy helped them understand that they were safe now, that the machines could never hurt them again. Maria visited them regularly, watching with joy as they blossomed. Emma's artwork became bright and colorful again, showing families playing together, houses filled with sunshine, children who looked happy and free. Lily started singing again, something she hadn't done since her mother's passing years before. "You saved us," Emma told Maria during one visit, her small hand gripping Maria's tightly. "When everyone was pretending everything was okay, you saw the truth. You believed us when we couldn't even believe ourselves." The impact of the case extended beyond the Sterling family. Maria's courage to speak up, despite her vulnerable position, inspired changes in how domestic workers could report abuse. Sarah Chen worked to establish better protections for household employees who witnessed concerning situations. Robert Sterling, devastated by his failure to protect his children, committed himself to being the father they deserved. He scaled back his travel dramatically, entered therapy to address his work around addiction, and slowly began rebuilding relationships with Emma and Lily. Victoria's conviction sent shockwaves through Beverly Hills society, forcing many to question what happened behind the perfect facades of their neighbors. The case became a catalyst for broader conversations about wealth, privilege, and the systems that protect abusers when they have enough money and status. For Maria, the experience changed everything. She found work with a family who valued her integrity and treated her with respect. But more importantly, she found peace in knowing that when it mattered most, she had found the courage to protect two innocent children. Years later, when Emma and Lily graduated from high school, they invited Maria to the ceremony. Watching them walk across the stage, confident and whole, Maria thought about the path that had brought them all to this moment. It had started with fear, with silence, with a system designed to protect the powerful, but it had ended with truth, with justice, with the understanding that sometimes one person's courage to speak up can change everything. The Sterling mansion still stands in Beverly Hills, now owned by a different family. But for those who remember the case, it serves as a reminder that behind every perfect facade, there may be stories waiting to be told, voices waiting to be heard, and children waiting to be saved by someone brave enough to break the silence.